Oh, hi. You caught me ready for you this time. But this time, we're doing this show live. We'll do it live. Hello, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris, and we don't always do interviews on this show, but when we do, it's always somebody special. And I'm pretty excited to get to chat with our guest again. If you read comics these days, there's an excellent chance you've read something by him because, as you've seen in the thumbnail, our guest is Scott Snyder. He's written everything from Wytches to Night of the Ghoul, White Boat, Batman, of course, so many more. Lots of publishers, lots of great collaborators. Folks, I think you know him and love him. Let me welcome, this way, Mr. Scott Snyder. How are you, Scott?
I'm good, Chris. How are you doing, man? It's good to see you again.
It's always good to see you. You have been doing the publicity rounds. It's like when a movie star has a movie and they show up on all the late night talk shows. You're doing like all the comic book tuber shows.
Oh man, well it's a pleasure to get to do it with you. I mean, like I feel like we go back, and I'm always like very grateful for your support and all the stuff that you do for comics in general. So it's a thrill to be back here. I was looking, I was like, when was the last time? I was asking Tyler, my assistant. It was like, oh, we've been on before this and that and everything. Yeah. So I know we go back. So I appreciate you making time for me tonight.
Absolutely. And, we're going to eventually sort of talk a bunch about DC's All In initiative, your new book, Absolute Batman. But I do want to let folks know right up at the top, the reason we're sort of doing a live show right now, on Friday the 13th, is because Monday is the final order cutoff. If you'd like to ask your local comic book store, it's live, no edits. If you want to ask your local comic shop to order you a copy of Absolute Batman.
So, very true. Yes. So, and we're not trying, I'm not shilling for sales. We're already, at a bar that we're incredibly happy with. It's more the worry that, the way FOC works, or final order cutoff works, in case you're not familiar, is that if you call your store and you reserve a copy, you're guaranteed to get one. But they only order a certain number of copies for sort of general sale. And if a book sells out or has buzz around it and it sells out first day or that stuff, it's really likely you'll wind up going to the store and not getting one. So for us, Monday is your last chance to make sure you have a copy waiting, and DC is like very, very confident of a sellout. So I would just encourage everyone to get it. I'm so proud of the work Nick did, and Frank, the colorist, and Clayton, the letterer, and I love the book just for the team. Yeah, so I hope you guys will or reserve your copy now.
It's exciting to see you coming back to DC, but I want to level set things here real quick, and I'm going to peel back the curtain slightly for the audience. I'll let them know that Scott is one of the very few pros in the industry who every once in a while has just dropped me a message to say, how are you? And I haven't hidden that I've had certain mental or physical health issues here and there. And I don't do that to whine, complain, or make a big deal of it, but to potentially destigmatize some of these things. And I just want to say, so you're a really empathetic, kind person, Scott. I appreciate that. And then I pick up your books and you just create misery and horror for your poor characters. And I do have trouble reconciling that. Where does this dark for books like, what's a recent one? White Boat.
Yeah.
You've done with Batman. You've done things like Black Mirror, Wytches is getting adapted. You've got a lot of horror. Where does this darkness come from?
Oh, thanks, brother. Well, no, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I think it really comes from just being a really anxious and nervous kid. I've always dealt with anxiety, and when I was growing up, I had a lot of tics, a lot of nervous habits, and I was always just a very frightened kid, I think, in a lot of ways. And carried that forward. And horror, what I discovered early was that horror movies, horror comics, horror books kind of gave me a place to explore those fears in a safe place.
Hmm.
And so horror became my favorite genre when I was like 8, 9 years old. You know, we had a video store. I remember I grew up in New York City, down on the Lower East Side, and there was a video store called the Video Stop on 26th Street and 3rd Avenue. I still remember. And they would not rent R-rated horror movies or R-rated movies to kids, but they would deliver them if you called up. So it was like this neighborhood secret, and we watched everything from like Sleepaway Camp 2, just Pumpkinhead, like all the bad '80s, wonderfully bad like '80s slasher movies.
Oh, I love that stuff though.
Yeah,
I think I do a show with Jim Mafood about it. I love that.
Oh my God, dude, exactly. And then I remember it was Night of the Living Dead was the one that I rented, and my friends were coming over. I was probably 9 years old, 10 years old. And I didn't realize it was black and white, and it showed up, and I was like, "Oh no, this isn't going to be scary at all."
Oh man!
And I watched it myself before they came, and I was like, "We can't watch this. This is awful." And then I watched it, and it really bothered me, and I didn't know why. Like it just stuck with me and gave me nightmares. I had a lot of like issues about wanting to see it again, and I didn't understand. I hated the movie for years for that reason, and when I got older, it started to dawn on me. Now it's my favorite horror movie. But the reason is I wasn't prepared to deal with a horror movie or a horror narrative that really sort of, because I'd seen so many fun horror movies with gore and this and that. But that was the first one I saw that was so purely about something that was manifest in the scares, where all the people I thought that would escape, the young couple or Ben or Barbara, all die, and not only do they die, but they die because the people can't get along in the face
exactly.
of
Yeah.
And so it was so
the monster isn't necessarily the disturbing part that stays with you. It's how people treat each other.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that was sort of a crash course in what horror could be. And so for me, it's like, a very big separation. Like the comics are where I put all my fears. So I feel bad. I'll be like, let's go to your soccer game, kid, to my son. And then I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking about a story where like, a monster that eats children, right now, whatever. And I'm like, am I a horrible person? I'm at the soccer game, and all I'm thinking about is like, kids being.
I think you've cracked it though. I think you've cracked it, because I think of, just some of the ones I've mentioned recently, like White Boat or Night of the Ghoul. There's horrific, monstrous elements, but there's also like real relationships between, say, a father and a son, or brothers, and the horror is seeing these relationships break down, like, because you're like, Jesus, something more grounded could happen to me and could ruin my relationship, and that can be very scary, the thought of like how bad things can get.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like, and forgive me, my internet's okay, right? I'm not choppy for you or any of that.
You look good to me. Nobody's complaining in the.
I just wanted to make sure
chat.
I'm in my bedroom because my wife had to get our 17-year-old who wanted to stay late at school because he's popular and handsome, two things that I could never relate to in high school.
He's rebelling against you.
I know. He's like the anti-nerd, where I'm like, what is the matter with you? I was like, my handwriting is still like my dungeon master handwriting. But like so I'm watching our 5-year-old who is asleep one door down, and I would be in my office. I have like an office off the house, but I can't hear him out there, and the monitor doesn't go that far. So forgive me for like my
good.
my crazy really setting. But it was what's interesting. I feel like I write everything like a horror story. Even when I was writing Superman, for me, horror is the genre where it's just like conflict burned down to its purest form, where it's you up against your worst fear manifest. And drama and all these other genres kind of do that, but in a more muted or kind of mitigated way, and to great effect. But horror, it's like, there's your nightmarish fear. It has like fangs and teeth, and it's coming to get you, and when it's done right. And so, I always try and approach like everything I write that way, where when I was writing Batman, Death of the Family, for example, was about our Joker story, where he comes and he tries to kill the whole Bat Family was when we were pregnant with our second son, and I was like, I never expected to be successful in comics, and I was working on it right when we were pregnant with our second kid, and I was like, God, I didn't think I'd have a career. Do I want a career more than I want a family? Like, am I a bad father? Do I want like? And so you put all that stuff in there, and it's horror, right? It's Joker saying, "I hear your worst fears. I'll be them." And so I consider myself pretty thoroughly horror when it comes to my approach to writing, even when it's not.
I can see some of that.
A horror book, yeah.
It's interesting. You've been you had a great run on Batman, and did a bunch of stuff at DC, building up to like Death Knights and Death Metal, and then you took a break, doing like lots of more creator-owned projects, Demons, and I'm stuttering on the names. Nocterra
and Barnstormers, and more than you can count. I just went on a whole walkabout.
No, it's interesting, and so now you're doing something like for DC that's like it's definitely like they've got a huge push behind it. I'll say it's a marketing initiative to a degree. You had all these announcements at San Diego Comic-Con. You've done some really lovely interviews lately with like Sal on Comic Pop and with Sasha on Casually Comics, and I'm not trying to I won't try to list everybody, but all of a sudden you've sort of got to be like the face of this. What's that like? Can you tell us what that experience is like? Because mostly, you're writing at home. I figure kind of quietly, and then all of a sudden you have to sort of like be the pitch man.
Yeah, it's really strange, Chris. I mean, the only way I can describe it is sort of like I just pretend I'm always just talking to the person I'm talking to. Yeah. And I sort of have to block all of the other stuff out. Otherwise I have a lot of it's too much. Again, when I started all I've ever wanted to do was draw and write comics. But, when I finally broke in, I thought it would take me a very, very long time to get anywhere near any big character at DC. And I wound up, writing Batman on Detective Comics when I was 3 issues into American Vampire, which was the best. I mean, I'm the luckiest guy in the world, but it was also I never had a moment to breathe, because it was just you're fired out of a cannon, and suddenly you're in your dream job, and all you're worried about is losing it for all that time. And so it was a real sort of learning curve very quickly, and being able to just go with your instinct and try and block out what everybody is saying about you or thinking about the book and that stuff. And so the strange thing about promoting this is over those years, I think I learned to be able to just focus on the work and be able to come out and say, I don't mind. I had a lot of social anxiety back then. And what I learned was if I'm really proud of the book, I can take baby steps out in front of the camera to be like, okay, I'm going to go promote this. And what I've learned now, 15 years later, is just as long as I love what we're doing, I'll be a clown out in front of the camera. I'll go shill for anything, anywhere, and juggle and ride a unicycle if I love the book. But the key to the relationship with fans and the key to doing that, I feel is still honesty and transparency with your readership. So you won't see me out there when I'm writing something like Wildfires or writing something like, White Boat, being like, this is the biggest seller I've ever done, or this is the most. I'm not trying to gimmick you into buying something beyond what it is. I'm trying to be honest about what I'm trying to do. So if I do Book of Evil, which is prose and, a really experimental book, but one I'm crazy proud of with Jock, it's a future where 97% of the population are born psychopaths, but it's, 78, 79, 80% prose, and then spot illustrations. I'm not trying to go out there and be sell it the way I would sell Absolute Batman. I try to say,
makes sense. That makes sense. At the same time, do you feel the pressure that you have to be your own pitch man, your own marketing guy for this stuff? Is that I don't know, is that stressful or is that fun?
It's really, it's not, I mean, it's not, no, it's not stressful anymore. It used to be. Like with DC All In, right? The stress is more like, I love this initiative, and like to give you a primer on it. And again, like, I don't know if this is helpful, but the way that the whole thing came about was when I left superhero comics in 2020. I was so exhausted. I loved doing death metal, and that event itself was such a joy with Greg. But the company was volatile at that time. There was a lot of change happening, a lot of people being fired, and a lot of churn. There was a lot of like, can you connect this event to this 5G or that? Or there was like just a lot of things happening.
Right.
I was like, I just have to just make this what we always wanted it to be about, which is that if you've ever loved a comic, it's in continuity, and that's the point of the event. And like, just do this and get out. And then during that period of like 4 years off, I could kind of read superhero comics for fun. And during that period, this conversation erupted in like the mainstream media, and sort of in the general zeitgeist. I think that superheroes were done or over because people were thinking that the Marvel universe had kind of peaked and that the DCU was going to start later. And so there was this kind of like all these autopsies on superheroes, and yet there were all these great books happening in comics.
Yeah.
And so I was really lucky. There were offers from DC to come back and do Black Label, or an imprint, like a vanity imprint, and from Marvel to do a Booker stuff. And I thought about it really hard. I was like, do I do Iron Man, or try and do Wolverine, or do I do a DC? And I was just talking to friends like Josh Williamson, and I was like, you know what? What I'd really love to do is be like one part of a bigger initiative, the way we were with New 52 and Rebirth. And I had this like feeling, again, there was a lot of volatility, and forgive me if I'm just sort of talking at you, Chris, but my time.
No, I'm curious what you have to say. I guess, could I interrupt with something?
Yeah, please.
It's very interesting to hear you talk about how, you want to focus on telling a good story within the context of an event, that you like being able to collaborate with other people. And I think that, that can be the fans' concern, is that like events can get too unwieldy, right?
Yeah.
Like that's their concern. Like they trust a lot of creators, but sometimes things get really big. What kind of stuff have you guys done when you were coming up with All In and Absolute to manage everything, to make sure that like, everything is lined up as much as possible?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so what happened was, like, I was talking to Josh Williamson, and we were like, do you remember the fun like initiatives that we were a part of? Like I was part of the New 52. I loved it. It was crazy. There was a lot of chaos with it, but it was exciting because it sort of embraced the new and this kind of reinvention of superheroes. And then 5 years later, I was a part of Rebirth, which on the other hand was something that kind of went the other way and was this huge celebration of continuity and legacy and history, which was wonderful to be a part of as well. But, I was, and again, like, not to get too much inside baseball, but to give you like context, being at DC from 2008, 2009 through 2020 was fascinating, because you're there at a period where it goes from being like paper and ink comic books on 53rd Street and Broadway to being bought by Warner Brothers, moved out to Burbank. Then Warner Brothers is bought by AT&T, and then Discovery Plus. And so it becomes this bigger and bigger sort of machine. And there's so many benefits to that all of us were, all of us kind of took advantage of in great ways. Like, suddenly like there's an ability to work on the video games, or to have more muscle behind pushing comic books, and there's an interest from TV and film, and you can have conversations with Animated about. So it was really fun. But there's also it's much harder as you have more and more sort of corporate oversight to take the kind of crazy nimble swing that you could when it was just comics, where you could be like, we're just gonna fucking go crazy and try, a total reboot or this or that. And not that we want to do that. I just mean you can't just make those decisions, And so as a solo company, you need approval, and the approval gets more and more layered. I think the more megalodons swallow megalodons, you know, as you go. And so with All In, it became like, look, if we can do something that combines the new 50, and so the thing I'm trying to say is there was a lot of push and pull for the 10 years I was at DC, where, you know, there were people that thought we needed to go new for young people and new readers,
Sure.
and people that thought we needed to really embrace sort of longtime readers and go classic. And all those things are worthwhile, but some of us that came up in the middle of that felt like, why don't we just do all of it at once and just make one big celebratory event initiative? And we never could manage that with sort of the structure as such as it existed until 2020.
But you're saying that's what All In is?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
So what happened with All In was, I said to Josh, we were like, look, I don't want to come back and do Batman again. I don't want to come back and do Detective Chimp. I don't want to go to Marvel and do, but what I'd like to be part of is something that would celebrate all superhero comics and remind the mainstream and readers that superhero comics are not only alive and well, but this is where the characters are renewed. This is where they live their best lives. This is where they have their most epic stories. Let's do something that embraces all kinds of superhero storytelling all at once, where we do the New 52, where it's like brand new universe, radical new takes on the characters, and we do new jumping on points, steroid injection to the continuing series, remind people how awesome this long continuity tapestry of story is. Let's do both. So that's what All In is. Like, All In is one massive jumping on point where we offer you this buffet of superhero storytelling, where you have the Absolute Universe.
That's a good idea.
Brand new stuff. And the main universe, through October through January, will have all new jumping on points.
Okay.
And some new series as well. Some haven't even been announced yet. They have Titans and all kinds of.
So All In isn't necessarily rebooting, but it is fresh jumping on points to the stories or new creative teams like that. That's just okay. So October, we start getting just sort of like easy to jump on points if you've dipped out or haven't tried this stuff before.
Exactly.
So which came first then, with Absolute or the All In initiative? Did they come up simultaneously, or was one already happening and the other?
No, it was one big concept. It was like, let's create the greatest jumping on point at DC in a while, and where we offer you, instead of creating a binary where it's like rebooting because it's all new and we want new readers, or only renumbering to classic where we're trying to pull in continuing readers that might have lapsed. We do all of it at once, but without any gimmicks. We don't renumber or reboot. We just say to people, we're creating jumping on points, and we're going to offer you brand new takes on the characters in the Absolute Universe, where you can go and find sort of, you know, really wild reimaginings of these characters that are exciting and, you know, passionate and personal and relevant, resonant. Or you can also go over here and you can read the continuing Batman that you've loved, your Superman, but we'll have a jumping on point, and it's the most epic story yet. And that was, so what we did, this was like 2.5 years ago, we pitched this. It was all the way back at like, you know, San Diego 2021 or whatever, 2022. And then we went to New York 2022, and we had a big summit about it. And people, it's funny because people have been like looking at my Instagram or that stuff, and you can see the pictures of these things. Like there's the receipts of like when we tried to do this without saying what we were doing. It was like me in the offices with Josh and whatever. But like, so we've been building it a long time, and the goal was to be like, okay, let's go out there and, you know, and again, I don't know how much is boring or how much is interesting to people watching, but you know,
I'm interested. So like, that's all I can speak to. You've got my attention, sir. You had my interest, but now you have my attention.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, if you care about comics, like, there's a lot of stuff to know about the way things have been the last few years, and the way there's a lot of fucking, like, I can curse, right? I mean, I've had before, like, it's fine, right? Or no, sorry if I don't want to be bad, and like, but there's a lot of clickbait stuff online that'll be like, you know, propose bad reasons for why there's a malaise, or why superhero comics are here, or why there hasn't been a big event, or why this or why that. And when you work in the industry, there are really simple reasons for why things might be more atomized, or why there isn't maybe the same sort of everyone doing something all at once, the same kind of giant initiatives we used to do. And they're really simple, like mechanical reasons. Like I told you, like at DC, it's harder to get approval for those things, or harder to do those things because you're part of a bigger corporate
Sure.
constellation. Similarly, you know, COVID hit. People are out of the office, like in both companies, Marvel and DC, and people come back part time and they work at home part time. And so there's also less of a sense of being there together physically and saying we're going to take a swing as a company, because you're all sort of doing your thing and making books you're proud of, and there's so many good books. But sometimes you need that lightning rod, and you need someone to be like, you have the green light, like Marie or Jim Lee, to be like, you have the green light to everybody get in a room and do something crazy together. And that was the benefit of this, and that's kind of what this was about. And so it all started there. And I didn't know if I was going to write any book. Batman, nothing. Batman was the last book I thought I'd write. So that's where we are in the story.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, did you have any pause, knowing that like you've had time to be objective to a degree about your own work? It was very well received. Do you go like, boy, does that mean like, do I want to like tread those waters again? Do I want to dip in that inkwell again? Like, was there any hesitation, or was this different enough?
No, I wasn't going to do it at all. Like, there was no desire to do Batman again. So what happened was, like, 2021, 2022, Josh and I were like, let's do it. Let's do a big initiative. And Marie, who's amazing and one of my closest friends, Marie Javins, editor-in-chief, unsung hero of DC, and Jim Lee, who everyone loves and is amazing, was like, you know what? Let's just do it. Why not? Let's take a swing. Who cares who our bosses are going to be? Let's try it. And so I was like, great, let's do it. And they were like, but we need, and I said to them, like, I need some time. I'm in this Wytches writer's room and all this kind of stuff. Like, and again, like what I would stress to people is like, all of this for everybody involved, every creator. Jason Aaron does not need to write Absolute Superman. He's got the best-selling comic in all of comics with Turtles. Yep. He's got a million things going. Kelly Thompson has TV, all kinds of stuff. But it was a labor of love. It was like, let's just do it and have fun. And similarly for me,
that's exciting to hear.
Yeah, there's no need to come back to superhero comics right now. But it was like, let's have fun. And so they were like, we realized we needed about a 1.5 year runway.
Okay.
So it got approved in 2022.
That's good to hear that you've been planning it this long, because I think that sometimes fans get like nervous. Some books in New 52 are great, but you learn in retrospect there wasn't really that same amount of runway.
No, I was told 6 months before that we began that I was going to be on Batman, and it was number one.
Is encouraging.
Bruce Wayne. I thought I was writing Dick Grayson on Detectives. It was that fast. I remember we were at Chicago at a convention, and I already had written like the outline of what I thought I was doing with Dick Grayson year 2. And all of a sudden it was like, in 6 months you're going to be on Batman. I was like, what? And then I learned later it was going to be Batman #1. And it was just, everything was crazy. It was like,
let me interrupt, because, and I'm sorry if it's rude, but I'm getting excited because you went through like New 52 and that was a really good response, but Absolute Batman hasn't even come out quite yet. We're a month away. Were you expecting this level of investment with the fan art? Because I have never seen this much fan art for an upcoming superhero book.
No. I mean,
It's wild, right?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting anything, Chris. Honestly, like, again, Scott, like the way
that humongous logo on Batman's chest. Such a simple difference. Everybody's reacting to it. It's, it's something that people can just really latch onto. There has been so much fan art by both the readers and pros. It's incredible.
It's my, I mean, I really can't even process it. I mean, what happened was, again, like with All In, like we got approval to do it. We gave everybody at DC a lot of runway. And it was like, look, in about a year and a half, at the end of 2024, we're asking all creators to talk to your editors, and everybody was on board together. We had a big meeting, and we're going to start new story arcs. And the point of it is to do your biggest swing. If your biggest swing is to stay on your series and do a new arc that's either, something brand new or part of the story you're telling, do it. So someone like Tom King, who has his biggest arc with Trinity and all that on Wonder Woman, is like, I'll start in October. Great, start in October. Somebody like Tom Taylor, who was like, I think I've sort of told my story on Nightwing. I want to try something different. Great. But everybody had time to think about it and be like, what do I want to do that will be my biggest swing in October? And so that was the goal. And, they hired me and Josh as consultants, and we wanted to tell a story that would be about, with Darkseid and Superman, that sort of shapes the next couple of years. It would give a launching pad for people to be able to create, work in the absolute universe, create the absolute universe, create sort of jumping on points in the main universe without giving anybody stuff that they had to do, without letting everybody do what they wanted to do. And then, for me, what happened was, then my job was to go around with Josh and approach creators at Marvel, obviously approach everybody at DC, talk about this, and say, what do you want to do come fall 2024? And so for the Absolute Universe, the ethos of it was, look, we want you to take these characters and stay true to core. You can't change who they are. It can't be a different character in the costume. But what are the things that you think would be even more exciting if you changed? What are the things that would make it more personal to you, make it more, epic?
I love that.
If you thought it, what things feel vestigial? And so the concept, the only one that I had in my head was Batman. I was like, for example, what I would do with Batman, or what we could do with Batman, is instead of him being part of the system and order and his villains being chaos and anarchy, what if he comes up with nothing and is the small amount of anarchy and chaos and the fly in the ointment, and his villains are sort of this? And that was my pitch to creators. And so we go around, and then by 2023, Jason Aaron came on to Superman, and it was, he was just, we're friends, but like I didn't know him that well. And then we became like co-architects. He's amazing. And he was like, I'd like to do Superman. I thought he was going to do Batman, and he was Superman. And then we got Kelly to agree to do Wonder Woman, and her pitch for Wonder Woman is amazing, where it's like, again, like if you think about it, like the core thing about Superman that Jason identified that he wanted to change was that this day and age, people don't grow up in idyllic farm towns like Smallville,
right.
And so instead, in this version, Superman grows up on Krypton, in a town like Smallville on Krypton, in a rural Krypton place.
Wow.
And comes to Earth when he's 13.
That's so different.
And it's wild. It changes everything. And what Kelly identified was, the Amazons, instead of being apart from history, should be the secret heroes of history.
I love that.
And they've disappeared. And Wonder Woman grows up in hell because they hid her there because of something that made them disappear. You don't know why. And that's the mystery of the book. And she comes out of hell with like a flaming horse and the lasso of pain and the lasso of, and it's awesome. And so it was that. And so, but the way I pitched it to people was like, this is what you could do with Batman. And so we went to a couple people about Batman who I thought would be great. The scheduling didn't work out. And then, so we were at the end, and DC was kind of nervous. And it was James Tynan, who, is like my brother. I mean, we're family. Yes. He was my student when he was like 18 and I was like 20, whatever. And, before I broke into comics, I'd known him that long.
He's doing pretty well in comics too these days.
Oh, there's no greater joy than when someone who is your student becomes your teacher, believe me.
It's amazing.
And so he was like, I know who has to do Batman. I was like, okay, who? Tell me, please. Like, what's the number? And he was like, you need to do it. And I was like, oh, dude, shut up. I'm not doing Batman. And he was like, I'm not looking forward to the late night anxiety calls. But like, you've been.
So it fell to you?
Yes. But he was like, you've been using this pitch to go around and tell people to take their biggest swing. You should do that with DC. Don't write Detective Chimp. As much as I love this story, I want to tell with that. He was like, or Darkseid, do this. And so I was like, I'll do it if I can get the right
Wow.
art. I'm thinking of Nick Dragotta, this Daniel Warren Johnson, Nick Dragotta, like this kind of feel is the way I envision it.
Think it's such a great idea. Nick has done some great stuff with books like East of West that I think a lot of people love. This is Batman is obviously on a bigger platform, but wow, I won't give anything away. I've been able to see the book, folks, and I just so that it's not just Scott telling you like this is what the big swing. It really looks gorgeous. Nick really knocked it out of the park with. It's Batman, but it's definitely new. The only thing I can think of tonally for the experience, not for the story, but tonally for the experience of reading something different like this, folks, I wouldn't even necessarily think of like Ultimate Marvel. What I'd think is when there's been a good TV or cartoon or film adaptation that takes some of those ideas and it always changes some things.
Yeah.
You guys have made some changes. I've got a question. I don't know if this was intentional or not. I love when you can strip away a lot of the advantages that a protagonist has and see if they can still be a hero. How much of that was intentional versus just a bunch of pitches seemed to say, it's Superman without, his adoptive parents. It's Batman without his billions. It's Wonder Woman without her Amazon, sisterhood. Like, was that intentional or not?
It was who would this hero be to make you brave in the world today? So when I have kids, I have like 3 boys, 2 teenagers, one 13, one 17. And when I look at them and I think about the way I wrote Batman confronting my fears, like I said, about fatherhood, about all kinds of stuff. Court of Owls is really transparent when it's like, you're suddenly on Bruce Wayne and the history of Batman is terrifying to you. And then the story is about the history coming to life and trying to kill you.
The updated Batman is I won't say what happens, folks. It's just very traumatic in a very believable way for today.
Well, that was the idea. The idea was like my favorite Batman stories, the stories that made me love that character. And I love him like more than just in comics. He's like my favorite character in all of literature.
Very versatile.
He's like the most simple construction, right? He is just a boy who suffers the worst trauma a kid can suffer. And instead of becoming hopeless or angry in a way that spirals downward only, he turns it into fuel to be like, I'm going to face those fears every single night and win and make the world better and stop it from happening to other people. And it's a really fun construction because he's also one of the few heroes. Like, I know it sounds weird, but like Spider-Man, Daredevil, like so many, even Superman, a lot of heroes worry about like, am I doing the right thing? And they start from this place of like, instead of being here,
right,
you start here, right? And or they start down, and you have to build them up, and then they come back to and they build up. Batman starts here where he's like, of course I'm doing the right thing.
He does not question himself, right?
No, and then you put it down, and there's a humor to it, like Lego Batman, which is one of my favorite things ever. But the humor masks like a truth, which is that we love to see people take a trauma or a terrible thing that happened and overcome it. Hey, and it's okay, it's my kid, and turn it into like gasoline to be like, I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen again, or to be triumphant, to turn trauma into triumph that way. And so Batman,
how do you constantly refresh that fuel? Like you say, like, that's his fuel, and it's like fuel burns up like that. That's I guess that's what makes him a superhero.
Well, that's the fun of this take was like, if you burn him down to just that, right?
Yeah.
Which is a strange thought because people think he needs the cave, he needs Alfred, he needs the money, he needs the gadgets. In my opinion, like very strongly, he doesn't need any of those things. He just needs to be that.
That's interesting.
If you start there from like 0, then what would Batman face if you like? So when I was a kid in the 80s in New York, in the city, Batman was the first character that I felt was going up against things that I was scared of, right? Like Night of the Living Dead from earlier, where it was like, suddenly you have a character that's facing these pervasive fears, where nuclear war and the Russians and the Cold War, it's all in Dark Knight Returns. The urban decay and fear of gangs, and Hell's Kitchen and and Times Square, like all those things are in there. And suddenly he's like, punch it in the face, like go right at it, and this. And that feeling of Batman, Batman exists to make us brave in the face of the things that scare us the most, and to be overconfident about that. That's the fun of him. And so here it was like, if you take him down to that basic math, what are the things that are the most frightening right now for a kid, for an adult, all of it, and then reframe everything from that. And especially if he comes up with nothing, no resources. And all of a sudden,
I really like that.
It became this this incredible, just creative explosion with Nick, where it was like, well, he would grow up with his villains. They would all be from the same neighborhood.
Yeah.
They would come up in Crime Alley, Park Row. He would know Waylon and Eddie and Ozzy and Harvey Dent and Selena. They would have kid relationships. They would play stickball and this and that, and sneak in places and this. And you know what else? Like Martha would be like den mother to them. She would know all of them. And Thomas, what if he's a teacher and he knows them? And it goes, and then you're like, well, who is the Joker? Well, who is Mr. Freeze? And who does he go up against? And he doesn't have the money to train around the world. He doesn't meet Henry Ducar. He doesn't meet fucking, the League of Assassins. He trains with Croc. He's MMA. He becomes a striker. He's awesome. And then he learns politics because Harvey Dent is a prosecutor, and he interns at City Hall, and he learns tech from Eddie, from the Riddler, who's like a genius about AI and all this. And all of it is neighborhood. All of it is this. All of it is, and he's more resourceful. He has to be more resourceful than the main Bruce.
It's very impressive. It's very heroic.
He has to be like a guerrilla fighter. He has to have stash houses. So he works in the sewers. He works in the power grid. He works in the in City Hall. He is a civic engineer, so he knows all about all the buildings he can hide stuff in. And also, he doesn't have to hide because he's no one. That was the key to me. The skeleton key was like, he doesn't
have to go out in public for galas and receptions and stuff like that.
Yeah, and so what does that allow him to be? It allows him to be a primal beast. He can be huge. And I was like, young, huge, unstoppable force. And so I was like, I love it. And then I was like, I can't write that because I'm not I'm not my kid. And so I was like, who am I? What's my point of view? And it was like, oh, I'm Alfred. I'm the older guy.
Oh, interesting.
Who's looking in, who thinks to himself, oh my God, the world we have left you kids, the world we have made, it's terrible. And then I'm looking at you and I'm like, I'm sorry, kid. The only thing to do is kind of deal with it and compromise. And this kid's like, fuck off. I'm going straight at it with an axe. And you're like, kid, you're going to get crushed. And then the kid doesn't. And he has a huge Batmobile. And you're like, this kid's kind of awesome. Maybe I should.
It's very impressive. It's very impressive. And he's younger, a little younger.
He's only 23, 24.
Right. I believe you did say 24, but okay. You're the writer. You've
pushed him up. I wanted him to be 19, and they pushed him all the way up to 24.
You got to fit some education and training in there. But I just realized you are such a great fit for this because you grew up in New York. And I think that does give you a perspective, because I'm thinking about how much you've made Gotham a character in both things. I'm curious what you grew up with, what I grew up with even more, was of course the crime. There was a Hell's Kitchen in New York.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's Chelsea. But that's what I'm getting at.
You remember Playland?
Would Gotham have these problems of what happens with urban renewal and what happens to the community with these new challenges?
Yes, it's in there. Okay. And so when we were growing up, the feeling was the city is kind of a shithole in a lot of ways or whatever.
Yeah.
But you're all in it together, and you've got to push for it. And that's in a lot of Frank Miller stuff. It's in a lot of, and then when I did my run with Greg, it was very post 9/11. It was this feeling of we're not going to be scared, and we're not going to be afraid of things, and we're going to remember that we're in it together. And so I'm very proud of the way we try to invert the kind of classic Batman that's I'm going to scare bad people into the shadows to reclaim the city, and instead to be like I'm going to inspire good people to come out into the light and be brave in the face of things that seem really scary. With this Batman, it's very different. Where now it feels like things have been hollowed out. There's no center, and things have been stratified. So Gotham, and Alfred says it in the opening pages of the book, there's these incredibly beautiful tall skyscrapers. If you go to New York now, my parents still live in my high school apartment, so it looked like I died until I was about 16, where it was like all my high school pennies and humiliations. And like, I would go to Comic-Con and stay with them. And
okay.
Yeah, so I'd go and like sign some books and be proud and be like, I did it. And then I'd go home and be like, I'm not this boy anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a winner, whatever. But and I started getting a hotel. But they've changed the room now that I have, 3 kids. But the city now, when you go in, there are these beautiful buildings, and they're half empty because they're owned by companies and people that don't live there, and it's so expensive. And
real estate is just too expensive. Exactly. It doesn't make sense.
It's prettier and crueler, and like that's the feeling of Gotham in this book. The book is about that. Like, where is your heart, Gotham? Where is the dense, hot, beating center that used to be everybody is there in this public space and it's not there. And so it's
interesting.
Bruce is up against tougher things, like interests that want to make it more like that, interests that want to make it, meaner, and it's more violent. He's more violent. Everything is tougher. And so it is a shitload of fun. Like he wait till you see like his gadgets and his Batmobile and his wings and his I want to balance because it was a very considered the thing I'd say is that with Batman, again, it was imagine you're kind of standing there and you're sort of waiting for the bus, and then a Lamborghini or a fucking Indy 500 car comes and it's grab on, kid, and it's whoosh, and you're ah. Where it was that feeling of just trying to work by instinct to be what would I like to read? What would I like to see? What would I like to pick up today? Whereas this book, I've had a year plus with Nick.
Good.
Nick signed on June of 2023. So we have had a long time to consider everything in it.
Yeah.
So for example, the symbol, right? Like the big talking point.
It's what everybody talks about on social media. It's so recognizable.
Well, we went through a lot of designs, a lot of things. And ultimately what we landed on, and it was always an axe that he takes off and he fights with. And it actually separates, and it's got all kinds of crazy shit. He has all the gadgets in this one are so fun, because he's an engineer, so he makes the wings the cape. So he walks like a bat. He can walk on the stilts.
Bats walk on their wings, if you folks don't know.
Yeah, so, and then he can also in issue 3 he climbs with them. He's he's like a bat, and so there's all kinds of stuff.
It's great that he's got new gadgets. Gadgets are awesome with superheroes, and a lot of superheroes have at least one iconic thing: a shield, a cape, a lasso. But the fact that you guys have come up with new ways to give him new gadgets is exciting.
Wait till you see the Batmobile is out of control. Wait till you see. I won't even say what it is, but it's it is a beast, and it's so fun. It changes, and it's got chainsaws and all kinds. It's so fun because but so and Bruce, Bruce is a genius. He's incredibly smart, but the fun with it was pitting him against the things you're most afraid of and trying to take all of this stuff and be we have all this time to think about it this time and be how would he form? What's the trauma that would form him? Okay, well, who would the Joker be in this world? If he's chaos, Batman, what would Joker be? Okay, well, if his villains are here, who's the villain he's up against? How would he meet Alfred? How would he... And I had time to think about it. And so the benefit of that isn't that it's going to be better than the stuff that I did with Greg. that stuff. I would never compare it to that, and that I don't know, like it's just separate. It's just different. But the difference is with that, I came in always like, did I do the right thing? I have no idea. I think I did the thing I love, but I'm not sure. And on this one, like, I know I did the thing I love. It might be wrong. You might hate it. It might suck.
You're becoming Bruce Wayne.
But I love it. Like,
I
love
right.
it, and Nick loves it, and we had plenty of time to like think about all of it. So there's a different level of like, if you guys hate the symbol, it's totally cool. We love it. And the reason there's an issue which is coming up of absolute. I mean, it's not coming up because it's not out yet. But like for me, I just wrote it, so it's coming up.
Yeah.
But like where it's called Go Bigger, and the whole issue is about why the symbol is so big. And if you read the first issue, one of the things, without giving away too much, is that one of Bruce's really early successes as a kid is he wins an engineering contest where he creates a bridge that can be brought into places that have suffered disasters to bring aid in. So it's a foldable bridge, and the bridge is based on the anatomy of the wing of a bat, because a bat is the only mammal that can fly and do the impossible. And his father is really instrumental in helping him build this thing, his teacher.
Okay.
And so
That's
the issue
really
is
cool.
all about how you think bigger, how
Yeah.
you think outside the clickbait and the things, how you think outside, people telling you criminals are this or heroes are that or rich people are wonderful. And the whole, and it's awesome too. He like fights a bunch of people and he's got a really cool gadget, but at core, the whole book is about thinking bigger.
Okay.
And so the symbol has to be like bursting off his chest.
Wow.
And that's why we made it that way. And so it was really funny. Like DC called me, like literally the head of publicity and sales and that called when all the discussion was happening about the logo. And they were like,
I love it.
we're really sorry people are so angry. Do you want to do like some interviews and correct it and talk about it? And I was like, no, I love it. Like, and Nick was laughing. We were it was like, great. Like, go for it, because we love the book and I feel really secure in it. And also like,
Good.
talk
Passion
about
counts for a lot.
Yeah, I hate the book. I think the thing, and I don't know, I'm curious to hear what you think about this, Chris. Like, tell me. But like for me with superhero comics, like the weird thing about the last couple of years is that there's a lot of really good books, but there's sort of like a lack of excitement around the medium itself, because it's sort of a conversation about how superheroes are over, and because it's harder for companies to take these massive swings to get people in the door. And so for me, I'm like, as long as people are excited and talking and want to go to stores and want to check things out, whether it's this or Absolute Wonder Woman or regular Superman or any of it, wonderful.
Well, that's an interesting question, actually. I'm getting a little older, so I'm not necessarily the people that are just starting to get into comics. I've been into comics for a while. There was a time where I bought almost every single Marvel and DC book.
Yeah.
There also weren't as many other publishers back then. I did get some indie stuff, like love Ninja Turtles and Tick and stuff like that. Cerebus for a while. But now I tend to like the superhero books that it's less about a character now for me, even though I do have my favorite characters, and more about when a top tier team is definitely able to take a swing on something. And that sometimes means, it's set out a little out of continuity. You get like a Mark Russell and
Dark
Michael
Age,
Red
that book is awesome. Yes.
You might get that. Or you might get just like a book. I thought I'd have one nearby, but like I think what Ryan North is doing on Fantastic Four is great, because it's just so, it doesn't have to cross over with everything, and it can tell, like, it gets left alone. And that happens with almost every superhero at a certain point. They maybe dip a little, and all of a sudden the creator just gets to do what they want. And all of a sudden somebody like Moon Knight or Aquaman becomes popular again. And it's because the creators get to really stretch their muscles. And so that's sort of what I look for more, is like when people get the opportunity to tell an uninterrupted story.
Well, the thing I'd say is that, and again, like I really do, like, you might again, I know I have my detractors and people think whatever. I'm like, I would never compare the quality of the stuff that I can do to my idols in comics, writing wise. But one thing I do stand by is that I've tried to be very honest with fans over the years about what we're trying to do or what a book is about.
Yeah.
Like, and Greg, like everybody I work with has the same attitude, which is that we're employed by these companies, but we work with fans or for fans, not in terms of giving you what you want. Like I might give you what you hate, but to try and have an honest relationship with the readership from the very beginning and be like, I'm not going to write something that I don't want for DC, even if that means getting fired, to some extent.
Sure.
And that created a lot of contention in early years with DC, a lot of fights and things. But now, being in a different position, it's just trying to communicate to fans like, this is what we're really trying to do. And with All In, the goal as a company-wide initiative, and I mean this on my kids, like Chris, was to make sure that everyone feels like they're doing what you said, where they have freedom on the character they're working on.
That's
to do
nice
the
to
thing
hear.
they're proud of. And look, you might not like it. It might not work for you, a certain thing. But Josh and I read all the pitches and we gave some advice, and sometimes people like took it and gave the advice back, and sometimes people were like, listen, this is what I really want to do, and I want to do it this way, and I might not understand it, but for me it was, and Josh, it was always like, if you're passionate about it and your editor believes this is the best swing, then I trust you and I will be the first person to go out and shill for your book. And so never worry that if you don't do what we think you should do, because it's, we're just two guys that have our own opinions. If you feel like this is my best swing, I trust you as a creator. I trust the editor as the editor, and we will be first in line to go out there and sing the praises of your book, even if I don't quite understand what you're going for. Because that's what people did for me. Like on Black Mirror, Dan and them did not understand what the fuck I was doing on that book, but they like shilled for me even though that. And so that's the goal with All In, is to give every creator and editor a chance to do the things they want with a lot of spotlight, a lot of muscle, be like, go with God and like tell your best superhero comic.
You know what it reminds me of? I had an interview a couple years ago with a writer and editor I really admire, Larry Hama. I don't think he's always acknowledged by the industry as much as he should be, but he was a really good editor. And I asked him one time, like, what do you see your role as an editor? And he goes, figuring out the right creative team for that book, and then just being as hands-off as possible. But in other words, I think that if you can find a team that's really passionate about an idea, that's a lot. That's a lot right there. If you are convinced that they have talent and they're excited, good. Because you can't chase an audience or a trend and hope that you're going to make everybody happy. You can't. But if you're passionate about it, there's a great chance that some other people are going to feed off of that and agree with you. That's just my take.
It's my take too, and I've been.
I like hearing that.
No, I've been in the position of like to be frank, like Jeff Johns and Dan DiDio did not get Court of Owls, did not, but they trusted us.
That's
when
nice.
We did it. No, seriously, and to their credit. And the same thing with Metal. Dan really didn't get it, and really was like, he openly saying I think this will fail, but you've earned my trust. You go ahead with it. You do what you want to do. And then he was first in line to be like, he's like, I'll promote it no matter what. I'll be out there, but he gave us it, and he was wonderful. And that, I'm just saying that attitude of I'm going to tell you what I think, and then I'm going to be your biggest supporter if you do that. And just, I trust you as a creator. And so
that's interesting.
It was really fun. It was really fun. And I really believe in some of the books that have smaller readerships, like Catwoman, Poison Ivy, they're really good.
Oh,
Harley was really good. What's coming in Harley. And then what's coming in October. And then similarly, the biggest books, what Josh has planned with Doomsday and Lois and Superman is he told me this idea a year ago, and I was like, that's the most epic idea. You've got to do that in All In. And like similarly, what Tom is doing with Trinity, and he told me like the father, all this stuff. I was like, oh my god, like, dude, please. And he's like, all right, I'll do it in October. And so, you know, there's that. There's Wade with Justice League.
I know. It's so I'm reading a lot of these. I'm reading a lot more DC than I have in many years, and some of it was when they had their last jumping on point. Like 2 years ago now.
Dawn of DC.
Dawn of DC, like I think that these jumping on points every couple of years is a really good idea. We're not going to like throw out continuity, but we're not going to like beat you over the head with like, hey kids, remember issue 137 when she picked up the magic gem?
Well, that was Josh's with Dawn of DC. What Josh was really instrumental in was almost like a testing for this, where it was like, if you do something that just gets people to start reading the books, it works. You don't need gimmicks if the books are strong. And so that way it was like, let's do something where the books are strong, but we do it like, you know, on steroids, all of it. So here again, the idea, and the other thing I'd say, so All In has like 3 parts, right?
Okay.
It's got the meta story, which is Josh and I wrote a story with everybody involved. Like we had everyone in a room, Ram V and Tom Taylor and Tom King and like the whole crew and editors and everyone. Like, then we were like, here's the story, pitch in, what do you think? How do you want to change it? Whatever. But it's about the ethos of All In. So in it, it's in DC All In #1. It comes out October 2nd. And
real soon.
Yeah, real soon. It's a flip book. And so it kind of is like Rebirth #1. And it tails off of Absolute Power. If you read Absolute Power 4, it comes out on the same day. DC All In #1, that sort of dovetails right off that story, right? So
I was trying to find a layout where I could show something like that.
Yeah, look at that. It's good. It's good, right? And so what happens is in DC All In #1, Darkseid, during the events of Absolute Power, unbeknownst to the heroes, discovers something about himself. He feels this strange quake when the multiverse is severed from the main DC universe, which, spoiler, but that happens. Okay. And as it's severed from the main universe, he starts to understand there's something in his nature that is tied to this kind of cosmology of the DCU, where he feels like my energy, like who I am, he's the only person with no double in the multiverse. He's singular. And yet, like, aspects of himself, energy from himself is funneled into every universe in this huge multiverse as it's expanded. Oh. And so he realizes that he's been weakened. And now that that thing is severed, should he be reborn, he will have an opportunity to form a universe that is wholly contained with Darkseid's energy and essence, and incubate him to become a Galactus-level Darkseid Prime that will end everything.
That would be bad.
Yes, and so the DC All In #1, one side of the book, you can read it from either side. It's like a genuine flip book, because we wanted it to be something that was like a print artifact, and I'll get to that in a second. But like, so Darkseid is going this way. If you read the other side, Superman narrates, and it's all about how the heroes have to embrace every kind of superhero in the Justice League and to think bigger than they've ever have. And so Josh and I co-wrote the whole thing, but it's about the thesis of All In itself, right? Darkseid is the troll that's like, superheroes are over. I'm going to be the new ending for all superhero stories ever. Superman is kind of like, we actually need to embrace every kind of hero and every kind of superhero story to be able to show them that we're stronger than this kind of challenge that we're facing today, and we always have been. But it plays out over the course of the next couple of years. So part 1 is this meta story.
Right.
It creates an absolute universe, allows for this new kind of storytelling, creates this kind of jumping on point in the main line. Part 2 is it's all in the books. So if it's, you know, if we're all in as creators as part 1, we're going to make this meta story and we're all going to buy it. Part 2 is sort of all in the books, right? So every single story has a jumping on point, whether it's a brand new reinvention of a character like like Kelly Thompson's Wonder Woman and Absolute, or if it's a brand new jumping on point, like what's happening in Detective Comics with Tom Taylor and Javi Fernandez.
Sure. Sure.
And so the third part, though, is it's all in the stores. And so a big part of the initiative was talking to retailers, Steve from Third Eye, Gall from Midtown, Mario from Midtown,
Got it.
Coliseum of Comics, like just talking to a bunch of retailers and being like, what if we do this thing? And I went to my comic shop, Fourth World, that I've been going to since before I broke in. And Midtown and everybody, and before this got approved as an initiative, and was like, would this be good? Is this something you want? And they were like, yes, it is. And we were like, what incentives, what things would help you with it? And so that was a huge part of it, was like variant covers, like the boring stuff for, casual fans, like, retailer buy-in. So if a store wants to get their own store variant, the buy-in is too high. It's like 3,000.
And you guys lowered that to 1,000 copies, right?
Yes, we lowered all of it. It was a DC was wonderful about, like, okay, listen, like, and
folks,
so we got all the retailers.
I just want to help explain this to my audience. I actually talked about it on my weekly news show. So 3,000 copies for even a small chain, that's a lot of copies for one sort of set of stores to sell. But 1,000, and they could get their own special cover.
Yeah.
They have to get an artist that gets approved and all, but maybe they mention their store, or they can just have the bragging rights of saying, we hired, hot new artist XYZ, or a local artist that people like really respond to. And I've even seen like some of these variant covers that DC has done in the past. Sometimes like two smaller store chains will team up, and they'll just say like, we'll both do that. I think that's fantastic.
And we're
you guys have lowered that.
I haven't said it yet, but on like over the weekend, I talked to DC today, but me and Nick are going to do a thing where if you do that, I mean, they've already bought them. So but if you do a retailer variant and you want us to sign 50 copies of your retailer variant and you send it to us, we'll send it back to you signed. Like,
wow.
So we're doing,
that's a lot.
And just all this kind of stuff to try and like, because one of the things that DC was excited about was, we were saying, like, there's this belief that since COVID, buying habits have calcified around buying once a month. And so, like, the initial, I'll give you another example. And again, like, forgive me if this is like, again, like boring comic, mechanics, but DC was like, we should put out all the Absolute books out on one day and own that day. And it will be the, huge sales day for DC. And because people only go in once a month. And, I talked to Steve at Third Eye, and I talked to a bunch of retailers and was like, is this good? And they were like, no, because we want to break those habits. And honestly, we feel like fans want to come in every week. So I was like, I want to come in.
I agree.
So all you need is an excuse. And so we went to DC, and I had Steve, we had a retailer call where they called. I flew out. I was in LA talking to everybody there. I was in Burbank with them. We had the retailers call and explain this, and DC was very receptive. It was like, okay, we'll break it up and we'll do a selection of books every single week where there's one Absolute book and there's lots of new, continuing series, some new series within the main universe, and we'll do that. But is there anything else we can do to try and help people get in stores? And they were like, well, what if there's like a free thing? And I was like, well, so it was like, in the main book, in DC All In #1, Superman forms this huge new Justice League. And he gives everybody a Justice League card. And the card is designed by, the whole first page is how Batman makes the card with science tech, with Mr. Terrific and whatever. And then how Superman uses alien tech to like, make the card cosmic. And then how Wonder Woman encases it in magic. And so we were like, what if we do the first week, we give retailers, if they order, they just want them for free, and then they can buy extras, but like tons of Justice League cards that are Batman themed. And then second week, tons of cards that are Superman themed, and cards that are Wonder Woman themed, cards that are, blank for people to write, and then cards that are Darkseid corrupted because of the story. And be like,
fans love the free things.
Yeah.
And why you got to do that?
But again, there was a talk about like, okay, so what's the checklist? What do people have to buy to get it? And it was like let's throw that away. and be like, there's no checklist. All it has to be is you buy 3 or 4 DC comics of any kind, old or new, and then the retailer can decide to give you a card. And the fun of it is retailers can just give a card to a kid for buying nothing. Or you know what? I told retailers, I was like, if people buy 3 Marvel comics, give them a card. Who cares? Like, the fun is to celebrate superhero comics and be like, here's a reason to come back every single week.
I think it's a great
celebrate. And that was it.
I think it's a great thing to do with retailers, and make them feel valued and know that they're appreciated, and try to make something fun for people like me that sincerely just enjoy going into the store every week. It's just part of like a really fun routine, and the shine doesn't wear off for me. But like the fun little extras, that's a great idea. I hope it really helps.
That's what I mean. It was just kind of like all in the stores. Like, give retailers every reason to be excited, to be happy, to get people in the stores. And again, it's not even, it is about DC, but it's about superhero comics, where it's more like to remind people that whatever conversation is happening about superheroes or blah, 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 you know, in the mainstream sort of, in the mainstream sort of zeitgeist, that over here, they're living their most epic stories, and they're being reinvented, and they're, you know, doing their classics, and so just look at Batman, right? So the fall of October, you have Absolute Batman, which is like a radical reinvention of Batman. You have classic Batman with Chip. You have the continuing series, which if you've been enjoying it, it continues, but it's got a massive, awesome new arc with Jorge Jimenez and Chip. You've got a really legacy sort of story with Mark Waid and Chris Samney.
So good.
I read the pitch and it was amazing, and then I just read the first issue in color lettered. It's fucking fantastic.
That's
Batman
awesome.
in year 1, and you have, if you like Bat Family, you have Batman and Robin by the amazing Phil Johnson, and you have Detective Comics if you like Batman as Pure Detective by Tom Taylor and stuff. So you have
you're forgetting one, the webtoons.
Oh yes,
and you have
Batman Family Adventures. Yes, if you want that. But I'm just saying, you have every iteration of Batman.
Yeah,
and
sure.
That's the goal of All In, to give you absolute Superman, which is like this. But you also have Mark Waid doing Action Comics, a Phantom Zone story, which when he told me the idea 6 months ago, I was like, this is the best Phantom. It's such a great idea about Phantom Zone. So you have classic, you have Reinvented and Absolute, and you have the mainstream series doing the biggest, most epic stuff with Darkseid with Doomsday you've ever seen. So it's just giving you all these selections. You have epic Wonder Woman with Tom King and Danny Simpari, and then you have like a brand new young wild Wonder Woman over here with Hayden Sherman and Kelly Thompson.
So cool.
And, you know what I'm saying? It's meant to be like, you know, pick your poison, just have fun. Like,
is there a reason, Scott, why DC has so many great artists right now? Because they really have a murderer's row of artistic talent.
I would credit like Marie Javins, who used to be a colorist and is just a wonderful boss. I would credit her and Jim Lee, who's so creator friendly, and then Paul Kaminsky and Rob Levin, and like, I mean, they're great editors there. Chris Conroy and Katie Kubert. A lot of them came through Vertigo and came through very, very creator friendly channels.
Okay.
So you read Absolute Batman. There's a lot of shit in there that I thought they were going to be like, you can't do this.
Yeah.
And they were just like, let us do it. They just do it, you know?
Okay. It's exciting. It's exciting. Yeah, it feels like there's very, very little, if any, restraints. When I read it, I go, wow, yeah, this is definitely a new take on Batman. I still see Batman in it, but it has so many different elements that I didn't expect. And I love the idea. I am personally excited about the Absolute books that have been announced. It's got writers and artists that I really admire. And I love the idea of finding a way to make some of these heroes underdogs again. Strip away some of the advantages that they have and find a way to actually make somebody heroic. You know, when they have to try that much harder, it's that much more heroic. So I'm pretty darn excited about it.
Thanks, man. And again, like if you're not into it, that's fine. Like readers out there, you still have all the classic ones happening. So there's
Absolutely.
no,
Yeah.
that's the goal, is like nothing is being, there's nothing to make you feel like it's additive. It's meant to be like, here's
You
a
don't have
bigger
to get them
buffet.
all.
Yeah, here's
If
a
you
bigger
like them all,
buffet.
great. But you're saying pick the version that you like, and
Just
that's good.
have fun. We're trying to show you the elasticity of superhero comics and the expansiveness of it, and just
Yeah.
be like, pick whatever you want. Like have fun, that, and celebrate superhero comics. Support your stores. Go in there. Like we made this with love. Like one of the big things is like, again, you know, DC Comics when I started was an office on 53rd Street and Broadway, right?
Right.
DC
Right.
Comics now is in a building on the Warner Brothers lot where it's not its own thing. All the same people, like the people that love DC Comics, are there, and there is DC. They made their own kind of DC thing out of it. And again, this is not knocking anyone or any Warner Brothers, whatever. But sometimes in this environment, it can be hard to remember that you're just fucking awesome DC Comics. Like you make that. And so part of my job as a consultant was to fly out and be like, I know we're not in the same space and some people are at home, some people are here.
Yeah.
But like when we get together, we can give people everything. And just like, let's have fun because we like each other. Like I know all these people for a long time. There's some new faces there, but generally and that's the other thing is like people are like, oh, comic editors, like they are not paid wonderfully in the world. Like they're in it for love of medium. You should go thank a comic editor like every day. And everyone at DC Comics is there because they love this medium, and they moved to California, half of them, because they wanted to stay in comics. And so there is an energy around All In, which is just us being like, you know what? We're the same neighborhood kids from 53rd Street, and we're going to make some crazy ass thing. It's all the things we tried over the last 15 years, but all at once. It's going to welcome you in and celebrate everything and have fun together, and it's not trying to trick you or be a gimmick, or it's retailer friendly. We've talked to everybody, and it's just like, it doesn't need a hard sell. It just is supposed to be like, have fun, enjoy superhero comics. Here's some awesome books of every stripe, and go support your stores.
I love that. That's really nice. I love that message because I believe a rising tide lifts all boats. Does well for all the publishers. And so again, we started by saying this, but I'll mention it again. You've got through Monday to tell your store if you would like them to order you a copy of Absolute Batman. They don't ask for money up front or anything like that, folks. They just know they've got a guaranteed sale there. They're always happy to do it. You get a copy. They sell a copy. If you think that this sounds interesting, tell them to do that.
Yeah. And also go look at if you go to the, League of Comic Geeks or any of the places that list all the comics, Comic Hub, and you just look at the books, or go give some things a try, at DC, at Marvel too. But at DC, we have tried to put something together starting October 2nd that gives you brand new kind of entry points to all these characters. And again, there is no, I am not a corporate, I have Wytches. We have a lot of shit that I don't.
Yeah, you've got Wytches at Amazon. You've just got this distillery stuff like White Boat. You've got lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, man. There's no bullshit about trying to be I'm not a corporate. I don't have a corporate job. I just was hired as a consultant to do this because it was let's make something for a year and a half, and it's essentially over. I'm just doing it, But the fun of it is, everybody involved wanted to try something on these characters with a little bit more freedom, a little bit more steroids, a little bit more let's do this at the same time. And so I hope you'll give a lot of books a chance, because there's so many creators that some of whom are rising stars, some of whom are super established, but who came in and were like, you know what, I'm going to take a really cool swing on these characters. I'm going to do my best.
That's
and
fair.
So I hope you'll give them a shot. Like I did my best with Absolute Batman, but I hope you'll use that as like a doorway to all the stuff that DC's doing, because I'm really proud to be like a small part of the whole collective of books that's coming out.
And I just hope that you keep having fun, because as long as you're satisfying that creative itch, we're probably going to get good stories out of it. So that's my marching orders to you.
This book has become a happy place. Like it's so fun working with Nick on this. Like there's no worry or whatever. It's just like we're making a book for fan fiction for ourselves, where it's like, this is like, wait till you see issues 5. Like it's nuts. Like
that's cool.
The bat signal and you'll see. It's just crazy. Like it's just, everything is new. It just feels like it just feels uncharted territory. Like you're chopping down stuff as you're moving through this like weird landscape where you don't even know what's next. And with Batman, it was always a negotiation with the past. It's always a negotiation with the classic, sort of unrelenting past of or history of a character, origin of a character. You cannot move Riddler from what has happened in the past and who he is. But here, it's just all new. It's like, who would Mr. Freeze be? Like, who would
it'll be fun?
Be, Yeah, who would Man-Bat
cool.
be? And it's
crazy.
It's like you said, like creating an animated series or something where you're like, this is amazing. So
it was a cool feeling reading that issue. I'm looking forward to more. What else should folks look out for from you specifically?
Well, I'm really proud of the indies. Like I'm doing this book White Boat over at DSTLRY. I'm really proud of it. It's with Francesco Francavilla.
Yeah, I've had nice things to say about it.
Yeah, it just came out. And then issue 3 will be out in a month or so. And then I'm doing another book for DSTLRY called You Won't Feel a Thing. It's really fun with Jock. It's super dark. It's like Jock, I like to do really personal books with Jock because he's always encourages me, like Wytches, to go darker, darker, darker. And this one is like pitch black. It's like a serial killer, mystery.
You've got your regulars that you work with, from Greg Capullo to Francesco Francavilla and Jock. Like you've got your regulars.
I do. Well, Jock, it was funny because I told him the story before I knew he would do it, where I was like, I'm just feeling lately, because this summer has been like a nightmare between, working on Wytches and this Batman stuff, because the writer's strike pushed the Wytches cartoon on top of this. Yeah. So it's like I'm in this writer's room from 12 to 5, like every day.
Wow.
In his room, and it's fine. Like I love it, but it's on top of the comic stuff. It's a lot, and I feel like I missed out on a lot of things with my kids. And so this story is about a detective who hunts serial killers like Mindhunter, but has early onset dementia in his 60s and is in an assisted living facility.
Oh,
and,
dude.
I know.
I love your crime stuff. We talked about horror. We've talked about like superheroes a lot tonight. But if folks don't know, like, I think Scott did great crime stuff, and like I thought Wildfires was.
I love that book. Yeah, it was. I love doing those books that fly under the radar, and this one is like in that spirit of that kind of darkness, where this guy. So when he was very young, the thing that made him want to be a detective, he wanted to have another career, and he was about to, on the night he was going to propose to his girlfriend when he was like 21, he goes to her house with the ring and he finds her like dead and murdered. And it makes him want to be a detective. And the case is never solved. And he comes to believe over the years that this guy is this prolific serial killer that killed her. But there's really no evidence of it. He can't really track it. And it's this guy called The Smile. It's really creepy with this. He takes teeth from his people, but he's just like, nobody believes him, and he's like, and it gets dropped, and so he comes to believe it was just some kind of random thing. But then as he's in this assisted living facility in town, somebody is murdered in a similar way, and he comes to believe that, in fact, it wasn't like a drifter. It was somebody he grew up with that was in the town and has now returned home too.
Oh my God.
And So at the end of his life, as his memory is failing, and the book is this kind of impressionistic, it's the theme of it is every morning his nurse gives him these memory cards where she's like, what's behind this door? What's behind that? It goes through these doors and shows you this
So
history.
he might be making connections, but he's also like having trouble remembering this stuff.
And so you're not sure
Wow.
but it gets scarier and scarier as he's like becomes really convinced that it's one of the people he knew growing up that's killed 20 to 30 people over the years in brutal ways, and
I wonder.
his home and is circling him, and so it's this very paranoid story about, but it's also really personal because what it really is about is like a guy who feels like he spent his whole life working and chasing, sort of putting bad people away, doing this stuff at the expense of his personal life. And now suddenly at the end of his life, he has this sudden chance in his own mind to solve this case that will make it all make sense and make it all worth it.
That sounds so dangerous, though.
I know,
because I don't know how much you can trust. Like, I think one of the scariest things is like how we can't trust our own memories, even when we're still like mentally healthy and everything.
Oh
like,
yeah,
the mind tricks you. Like your memories can't always be trusted, and the idea of then like potentially having a dementia that sincerely scares me.
That's what the book is about. Is this kind of like he's trying to. Yeah. Anyway, the point is like, so that's the other book.
That's cool, man.
That starts at in November, and that's
October and November. Wow.
So I have these 2 books from DSTLRY, and and then some stuff coming out from Comixology and Dark Horse I'm excited about. But ultimately, like, if I can, after New York Comic Con, it'll like things will like get back to normal.
I don't know how you balance it all, because I was showing your website, like folks, and like this shows some of Scott's comics, of course, but if you really look at his website here, Best Jacket Press, beyond that, he's got a newsletter, he teaches writing classes, and he's got a family, as we found out. So
that's like my treehouse. The teaching is like my place where I'm like, it's like, there's some things that are just relief, where it's like I love teaching. It's like, but it's a lot, and it's too much. Like, again, the writer, it was all really planned out nicely, and then the writer's strike pushed the animated stuff on top of the Batman stuff. So that's where You Won't Feel a Thing came from, was like the feeling of like, am I a terrible father and husband for just working so hard this summer? And again, my life has been awesome and all of it, but like the last 4 months of doubling down on animated stuff by day, comics by night has been like.
So when you go to, you were just talking about it, and we can wrap up soon because I know it's much, much later there on the East Coast, but you are planning on going to New York Comic Con, right? You usually go to that one.
That's like when like everything, like the writers, all this stuff ends right before it. So I'm like I'm going there to like party my head off. Like,
and will you have a table again in the Artist Alley, or are you just going to be like doing panels and signings at like DC?
I'll have a table. I'll be doing stuff for DC, but most of all, we should go out and party at night and like enjoy and escape, Chris. Like, just go and like just blow off steam and relax. That's my goal.
No, I'm happy for you that you've got like an end day in sight then.
Well, again, like the hard thing is like I adore the work. I adore what we're doing with Wytches. And I adore Batman and all of it. Like, but it just the schedule sort of car crashed over the summer, so it was more just like I don't, at this age and with kids, I just don't want to miss stuff and be working around the clock. So, as much as I love it, I'm excited for it to. But that's why you put it into a book and be like, Jock, make a book with me about how I'm afraid that I'm like the only, like, I have to write about serial killers because I'm completely, stressed out. So I
think we sort of started and ended at a similar point there. So I think that's pretty darn good. Hey, thank you for sharing with, my viewers such an intimate look into not just the writing process, but behind the scenes, like, what it takes to collaborate, essentially. It's very interesting. And I'm very grateful for your time, especially knowing how busy you are.
No, man, I appreciate, I mean, we know each other outside of this, like Zoom box. And I just really appreciate what you do for comics, your passion for it, like, the way you support creators and all of us. So it's a real thrill whenever I get to come on and talk to you.
My favorite medium. I don't know what to say. I don't know what could ruin it for me, because I just think it's the most versatile, like fascinating medium. I love so many types of storytelling. Comics is just my personal favorite, so I love talking about it. And thank you for giving me some of your time to talk about it.
No, man, we'll be old men doing it. It'll be fun.
Sounds good. I'm never going to age, though. I've decided. Yeah. I've decided.
Well, I'm like 85. It's all just for men. And
looking pretty darn good for 85.
Yeah. So, anyway, I'll talk to you soon, brother.
Sounds good. Happy Friday the 13th, Scott. Take care. All right, folks. I think that should do it for this episode. Thank you very much to Scott, of course. Thank you to everybody that was in the live chat, asking questions, giving comments and feedback. And thank you to the people on my Patreon. You guys make this show possible. Thank you to the folks who have subscribed. But yeah, if you can hit like and subscribe, that really does help the channel. No lift there, hopefully, or a very small lift. You lift your hand over and you click the like button, or you click the subscribe button. That really helps me a lot. Scott had a lot of interesting stuff to say. I'll probably have some more interviews coming up in the near future. I'm talking to several different creators. And I was doing like sort of small, quick little interviews on my second channel. If you don't know about that, I've got a channel called Pros and Cons, and I do a weekly show, a live stream on Monday for a few hours, where I talk about the comics that came out that past week. I talk about the news of the past week, and sometimes we have a short interview just to plug something that's coming up. But I kind of like these deep dives too. They don't always get as many views as like a fully edited analysis video, but I personally find them very interesting, and it seems like in the comments the people that do watch them do get something out of it. So I'm very grateful to people that are willing to share that creative process with us. Let's see. So yeah, it is Friday the 13th today. That's why I'm wearing this. And I do a show with comic book artist extraordinaire Jim Mahfood. Here's a book by him. What else do we have that's more relevant? Maybe things like Girl Scouts. Jim and I do a show on that Pros and Cons channel called Trash Movie Bonanza. Our 13th episode dropped this morning. It's Friday the 13th. We got to talk about Friday the 13th. I'd appreciate it if you guys check that out. But anyway, I am that close to finishing the edit on another Comic Tropes episode. Probably going to give this a little breathing room. So if you are a patron of mine on Patreon, you will get early access, and then it'll come out for everybody. Thanks, everybody, for the questions, the comments, the likes. It really means a lot to me. And until I see you next time, you get a double salute. And just know that you're supposed to keep reading comics. Bye.